Okay, so today we're doing something a little different. We're going to dive deep into quantum mechanics
Hmm.
and the law of attraction.
Right.
Two things that maybe you don't normally think about together, like quantum mechanics, hard science, super complicated. And then you've got law of attraction, which sometimes gets lumped in with, like mystical thinking. But for this deep dive, you sent over a couple of YouTube videos from Become Unlimited with Us Transformational Coaching. And I'm excited about this because these videos try to connect those two concepts together.
Yeah. I mean, it is interesting. Most of the time when people are talking about quantum mechanics, they don't usually bring up the law of attraction.
Exactly. So let's see if we can untangle some of this. And I got to say, that first video, the quantum mechanics one, it starts off with this really trippy experiment I think it's called the double slit experiment. And basically what it showed is that like light and matter, like the smallest building blocks of the universe, they don't really act like, solid things all the time. They can act like a wave or a particle depending on if someone's like watching them.
It's almost like they're like deciding how to behave, like, oh, someone's looking, let me act like a particle. It
Yeah.
really kind of throws a wrench into how we normally think about the world
I
working.
know. It's like, whoa, hold on. Reality is uncertain until someone looks at it. That's kind of freaky, right?
Well, it is. And this experiment, it's almost 100 years old now.
Wow.
And it really shook up the science world because it introduced this idea called wave-particle duality. And that's just a fancy way of saying that these tiny particles, they exist in this like cloud of possibilities, this wave, until they are measured or observed.
Right.
And then boom, the wave collapses and it becomes a specific thing.
So is it like our observation is what creates reality?
Yeah.
Is that too far out there?
It's a big question, like the kind that keeps physicists up at night. Some say that consciousness actually plays a part in collapsing the wave function, but then there are others who, are more on the side of no, reality is objective. It exists whether we look at it or not.
Okay. Okay. I can sort of see how this might connect to the law of attraction. Like, if observation can collapse those waves of possibility, maybe our thoughts can too, somehow. But I mean, how would that even work?
Well, that's where the second video comes in, and it gets more into like the psychology of it all, like how our brains are wired. And one of the things it talks about is this thing called the reticular activating system, or the RAS for short.
The RAS?
Yeah, and it's basically this filter in our brains that's always standing for information, right? But the thing is, it prioritizes stuff that matches our existing beliefs, kind of like confirmation bias.
Ah, okay. So like if you're constantly thinking negative thoughts, your RAS is going to highlight all the negative stuff happening around you and just make you feel worse.
Yeah, exactly. But, it works the other way too. If you're focused on positive things, thinking positive thoughts,
Mhm.
your RAS is going to be like, hey, look at all this good stuff happening. And suddenly the world seems a lot brighter.
So it's all about what you focus on.
Mhm.
And that kind of reminds me of, they gave a great example in the video. I think it was about pizza.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
If you're like craving pizza.
Yeah, suddenly you see pizza ads everywhere you go.
Exactly. Like you didn't notice them before, but your brain's now tuned into them.
Right. It's filtering information based on what's top of mind for you.
So that's like straight up how our brains work.
It is. It's like your brain's playing a little trick on you in a way, but it's all based on what you're telling it to pay attention to.
Okay. So now how does this tie back to like quantum mechanics? Because that seems like, totally separate.
Right. Well, it's not a direct link, the video doesn't really spell that out, but it does kind of hint that if our thoughts are energy,
Right.
which some interpretations of quantum mechanics would suggest.
Oh.
Yeah. And our RAS is like tuned to our thoughts, then maybe, just maybe, our thoughts could be influencing those probabilities we talked about, shaping the reality that we experience.
I see. I mean, I guess what we're talking about here is like, are we just passive observers in the universe?
Right.
Or can we actually like co-create reality with our minds?
It's a heady question for sure. And it's something that people have been debating for centuries. The videos don't say they have all the answers,
Right.
but they do suggest that by actively choosing to focus on positive things we want to see happen,
Right.
we can kind of train our RAS to notice more of that stuff and maybe even increase the likelihood of those things happening in our lives.
Okay. So that's a lot to think about.
It is.
I mean, this deep dive has really got me wondering about, what am I unknowingly attracting into my life just based on like my default thought patterns?
Right.
And, flip side, what could I achieve if I really consciously focused on what I want? It's a pretty powerful idea,
Yeah,
right?
it is. And It's a journey of self-discovery. It's not always easy,
Of course,
but it's definitely worth exploring.
I completely agree. And for everyone listening, I think this is something we can all take away from this.
Yeah.
Maybe take a moment to consider, like, what are you focusing on right now? And how might that be shaping your experiences, for better or worse? It's definitely something to ponder.
Absolutely.
Well, this has been a fascinating deep dive. Thanks for sharing these videos, and thanks everyone for listening.